I swear, Ellie came out of the womb wagon, a finger at me like she already had a bone to pick. We were just a couple of rowdy kids growing up in a modest house with thin walls and thinner patience from our parents. And from the minute Ellie figured out what competition was, it became her full-time job to outdo me in just about everything. If I got a B+, she'd have an A-. If I won a Little League game, she'd nail a gymnastics routine and make sure the whole neighborhood heard about it. She even made her lemonade stand with hand-painted signs and organic lemons from Aunt Janice's tree, just so she could outsell my 25-cent powdered mix on the corner. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't a slouch. I held my own. I was the kind of kid who could fix a bike chain with a paperclip and some chewing gum. But Ellie? She was sharp, calculated, always had a plan, always 3 steps ahead. And boy, could she talk trash. Every report card season, she'd saunter past me in the hallway, wave hers like a flag, and say, "Don't worry, Jake. Someone's got to be the second-best child." Mom and Dad tried to play neutral, bless their hearts, but you could tell they admired her drive. Meanwhile, I became the laid-back one, which, in adult language, meant Jake doesn't start fights, but he's real good at finishing them. By the time we hit high school, our competition turned from science fairs to scholarships. I had my eye on State Tech, a solid school, good engineering program. Ellie set her sights higher, some fancy school out east with a name you needed a double degree to pronounce. She got in. I didn't. And let me tell you, that one stung. I still remember sitting on the porch with my acceptance letter in hand, trying to smile while Ellie's was already framed on the living room wall. She strutted out the door like she'd been crowned queen of the universe. Said, "It's okay, Jake. You'll still make a decent mechanic someday." I laughed it off on the outside. Inside, I was ready to out-hustle her, outgrow her, and someday outshine her. Thing is, life don't always line up the way you script it. I worked hard, sure. Got through school, landed good jobs, climbed a few ladders. But Ellie? She shot off like a Roman candle. Graduated top of her class, got whisked away by some international fellowship, and before I knew it, she was living in Switzerland or Sweden or one of those shiny places that makes regular life seem a bit dull. We kept in touch, but the rivalry never died. Every phone call had a hidden jab. Her, "Oh, you're still in the States?" Me, "Yeah, some of us gotta work for a living." Her, "Don't worry, Jake. You're doing the best you can." I'd give her props, she was winning, at least on paper. But deep down, I never stopped believing I could turn things around. Maybe not her way. Maybe not with fanfare, but something real, something solid. And wouldn't you know it, that moment came when I least expected it. On a regular Wednesday, over cheap tacos and laughter, I met Mia. That's a whole story in itself, but we'll get there. Let's just say Mia didn't care about my resume, and she never once compared me to my sister, which was a first. And for a guy like me, that felt like gold. I met Mia on the kind of night you don't expect to remember. Some friends dragged me to a trivia night at a local bar. I was tired, grumpy, and about ready to fake a stomach bug to leave early, but there she was, on the opposing team, correcting the host about who actually invented the printing press. For the record, she was right, Gutenberg. I said Edison. Should have kept my mouth shut. Mia had this easy smile, eyes that actually listened, and the kind of laugh that made you forget the world was burning outside. We didn't hit it off immediately. She beat my team by 30 points and rubbed it in for a full week afterward. But something clicked. It wasn't long before we were inseparable. And let me tell you, for the first time in years, I stopped thinking about my sister every time I looked at my own reflection. Mia didn't care that I didn't go Ivy League. She didn't measure success in titles or geography. She measured it in kindness, consistency, and whether you could make a mean grilled cheese at midnight. I had just landed a job at a tech firm, not the flashiest gig, but good money, good benefits. I was starting to feel like maybe I was catching up, you know? Like maybe life had a second half, and I was finally getting my cleats on for it. But of course, Ellie found a way to show up, even from halfway across the planet. She called out of the blue. Said she'd accepted some position at the UN or NATO or one of those places with all the flags and microphones. It's a diplomatic placement, she said, but I'm sure you've never heard of it. That was classic Ellie. Tell you something great, then remind you why it's out of your league. She didn't ask about Mia. Didn't ask about the job. Just rattled off her wins like she was updating her Wikipedia page. Still, I was happy. I really was. Because for once, I wasn't chasing her shadow. I had my own thing. A good life. Solid ground. And then Mia pulled me aside one morning, eyes wide, coffee in hand, and said the words that make your knees go wobbly even if you're made of stone. Jake. I'm pregnant. Took me a full minute to find my voice. I didn't even ask if she was sure. I just laughed like a madman. Not out of fear, but out of that weird mix of joy and terror that hits you when life shifts gears without warning. We hadn't planned it, not really. But we loved each other, and that love felt steady. So a week later, we sat our parents down. Told them the news. I half expected my old man to choke on his tea, but he just leaned back, looked at Mia, and said, well, at least the kid'll have brains. We planned a wedding, small but honest. Nothing fancy. Backyard, some string lights, barbecue. We didn't want a spectacle. We just wanted family, love, and a little dignity. But nothing in my life with Ellie was ever simple. Word got to her somehow, probably through our cousin who can't keep a secret if you duct tape her mouth shut. And sure enough, I got a text. Getting married because of a baby? Cute. I guess some people settle for less. I didn't even answer. But she wasn't done. She started sending cryptic little messages, asking if Mia was sure it was mine. If I'd done the math. I knew she was poking the bear, trying to rattle my cage. And she almost did. My folks told me to ignore her. Mia, bless her heart, told me to focus on our life. Don't let her live rent-free in your head, she said. She's not your finish line. And maybe that's when it clicked. I wasn't racing her anymore. I was building something. Something real. Something mine. But Ellie? She wasn't done racing. And she had one more card up her sleeve that no one saw coming. About a month out from the wedding, things were finally humming along. Mia's belly was just starting to show. The dress was picked. I had convinced my buddy Dave to DJ with his questionable taste in 80s power ballads. And for the first time in my life, I felt like the man I always wanted to be. Then came the text. I'm flying in next week, with my daughter. Just like that. From Ellie. No lead up, no explanation. Last anyone heard, she was still single, living in Prague or Vienna or one of those postcard cities, working some hush-hush job where everyone wore lanyards and serious expressions. Nobody even knew she was dating anyone, let alone had a kid. Mom called me, frantic. Did you know about this? She didn't say a word during Christmas. Dad just mumbled something about Ellie's always been private, which was his polite way of saying she's a firecracker in a closed glove box. When Ellie showed up at the airport, she stepped off the plane like a movie star, big sunglasses, scarf, holding a baby girl like she was posing for a magazine cover. Said her name was Aria. No last name mentioned. No husband. No photos. Just vague talk of he's overseas right now, and we're keeping things low profile. The family, being who they are, ate it up. My mom cried. My aunt took 37 pictures in under a minute, and my dad offered to build a crib that afternoon. Everyone fluttered around her like moss to a sparkler. Now, Mia's no attention hog, not by a long shot, but I could feel her slipping into the background. The whispers started. Ellie's daughter is so adorable. Can you believe she's a mother now? She's doing it all, career and family. The kicker? Ellie never stopped poking. At dinner, she'd ask Mia if she was nervous the baby wouldn't look like me. She joked about how these rushed weddings rarely last, and one night, when she thought no one heard, she said to my cousin, Jake always settles. Guess he's still doing that. I damn near snapped, but my folks begged me to keep the peace. It's just jealousy, my mom said. You're doing well, and she doesn't like being out of the spotlight. Out of the spotlight? She was center stage, and I was background music. But something was off. I couldn't put my finger on it. But Aria, well, she didn't seem like Ellie's. Not in the way she held her. Not in the way she talked about her. And when Mia showed me a photo Ellie posted of herself pregnant, well, let's just say her bump looked suspiciously like a throw pillow under a sweater. And the date on the photo? About 6 weeks before she supposedly gave birth. I brought it up to Mia. She raised an eyebrow and said, You thinking what I'm thinking? I hope not, I said. But yeah, we didn't say it out loud then. But we both had a hunch that Ellie wasn't telling the whole truth. That baby might not be hers. Still, we focused on us. I tried to ignore the comments, tried to keep my eyes on Mia and the life we were building. But Ellie? She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. 1 week before the wedding, she pulled the last string she had, showed up uninvited at our house, baby in arms, smug as ever. You sure you want to do this, Jake? She said, eyes darting toward Mia's belly. I mean, are you even positive she's telling the truth? That was it. I stepped forward, ready to let her have it, But Mia grabbed my arm. Calm as the sea before a hurricane. "Let her go," she whispered. "She's not worth your peace." And she was right. But peace was a fragile thing, and it was about to get shattered. Now, leading up to the wedding, things were tense like a turkey at Thanksgiving. Mia was holding up like a champ, smiling, handling questions from relatives, tolerating my uncle's awful dad jokes. But I could see the stress wearing on her. And a big part of it? Ellie. She was like a storm cloud with a purse full of matches. Everywhere she went, she stirred the pot, whispering things behind our backs, making sure everyone heard just enough to doubt, but not enough to confront. Stuff like, "You know the timeline's a little suspicious, right?" Or, "She sure moved in fast for someone in love." Even dropped a line to my cousin's wife, saying, "Wouldn't surprise me if Mia's kid wasn't Jake's. He always was a sucker." Now, I ain't one to throw punches. Not anymore. But there was a fire in my gut every time I saw folks glancing at Mia's belly like it held some dirty secret. She noticed too, but she just smiled, shoulders back, and walked taller than any of them. The night before the wedding, we had a small dinner with both families. Nothing formal, just good food, a few laughs, and enough pie to end a small town. Ellie, of course, made herself the center of attention. She passed around her phone like a trophy, showing off pictures of baby Aria in every filter known to man. But Mia, bless her curious heart, asked to see the hospital photos. Ellie froze just a second too long. "Oh, I didn't want to share those. It was private. Very intense." Mia just nodded, polite as could be. But later that night, she showed me something. She'd reverse-searched one of Ellie's pictures, some site she used for work. Turns out, the photo Ellie posted of baby Aria in the stroller, it was a stock image from a baby supply company, cropped just enough to hide the watermark. I leaned back, stared at the ceiling, and said, "No way." She whispered, "Jake, I don't think the baby's hers." I didn't want to believe it. Not because I had faith in Ellie, but because it was just too wild. Who fakes a baby? Turns out, Ellie does. Wedding day comes. Sun shining, birds chirping, Mia glowing like a lantern in a field of fireflies. I was nervous, sure, but also happier than I'd ever been. My folks were beaming, the food smelled great, and the whole yard looked like something out of a dream. Cheap but heartfelt, strung up with lights and love. Then Ellie showed up, uninvited, with Aria in tow, wrapped in a flower crown and a too-white dress like she was trying to steal the whole dang show. Folks started buzzing. Cameras shifted. Even my grandma muttered, "Well, that's a choice." I didn't speak to her, just nodded and went back to helping Mia with her dress. We were 30 minutes from the vows when the rumbling started. Someone overheard Ellie saying the wedding was a joke, that the baby was obviously not Jake's, and that he's about to marry a liar. That's when Dad stepped in, took Ellie aside, quiet but firm, told her to leave. She refused. And right there, with my bride waiting under the arbor, Ellie strutted down the aisle like she owned it, stood next to the band, bouncing Aria on her hip, soaking in every sideways glance. Until the sirens showed up. 2 cop cars, blue and red lights flashing like disco balls at a funeral. Everyone froze. Then came the officer. "Ma'am," he said, straight to Ellie. "We need to speak with you about a missing child report filed overseas." Gasps. I kid you not. Gasps like it was a telenovela. You could hear forks drop. My uncle dropped his drink. Someone whispered, "Oh my lord." Turns out, Ellie didn't have a daughter. She had been babysitting Aria for 2 friends on vacation, a trusted friend, they said, until they came home and found her gone, the crib empty, and Ellie's apartment cleared out. They called the police. Filed charges. Ellie? She had hopped a flight home and started parading that poor child around like her own personal accessory. Photos? Fake. Pregnancy? Faked with pillows and careful lighting. The whole story? A straight-up, unfiltered lie. They arrested her right there, while everyone watched. And I swear to you, as she was being led away, she turned to me and hissed, "You'll never be better than me." And I just looked her square in the eye and said, "I already am." I'll be honest with you, after the cops slapped cuffs on Ellie and took her off the property, there was about 5 full minutes of dead silence. Even the birds stopped chirping like they didn't want to be involved. Aria's real parents arrived not long after, pale and panicked. Turned out they had flown back from the Canary Islands the moment they heard their baby was missing. Sweet couple, teary-eyed, clutching each other like they were barely holding it together. And when they saw their little girl safe in a guest room, sleeping like nothing had happened, they broke down. Right there on my deck. My mom hugged them both like she was their long-lost aunt. Once the baby was safely with them and the cops had cleared out, we were left with what I can only describe as the emotional equivalent of a power outage. Just blinking faces and people wondering, do we still go on with the wedding? I stepped outside. Mia was standing under the arbor, barefoot now, dress a little wrinkled, but still looking like a dream that had somehow survived a tornado. I walked up, took her hand, and said, "You still want to marry a guy whose sister tried to hijack his wedding with a stolen baby?" She looked me right in the eye and said, "Only if there's pie after." We got married that day, right on schedule. No DJ, he bailed after the sirens. No bouquet toss. Mia said she was too tired and just handed it to her cousin like she was passing the TV remote. But every single person who stayed? They clapped like it mattered. Because it did. My dad gave a speech about love being messy and how life doesn't follow a plan. Said something like, "You don't wait for the storm to pass. You get married under a damn umbrella if you have to." Not a dry eye in the yard, and trust me, most of these folks were the suck-it-up Aunt-leather type. Mia and I had our first dance in the kitchen, barefoot, her in that slightly dirted dress, me with a loose tie and bare sleeves. The stereo played something soft and slow, Frank Sinatra, or maybe a knockoff version of him. Didn't matter. It was perfect. Ellie didn't get the last word. She didn't ruin anything. If anything, she gave us a story that we'd tell for the rest of our lives. Later that night, when the last guest had trickled out and the string lights were buzzing low, I sat on the porch with a slice of cold pie and looked out at the stars. Mia joined me, belly round, feet sore, but smiling. "You think she'll go to prison?" she asked. "Probably," I said. "At least for a while." We both went quiet. See, I wasn't celebrating her fall. I'm not that guy. But there was a peace in me I hadn't felt since I was a kid trying to outdo a sister who never knew when to stop. Now, I didn't have to compete anymore. I had a wife, a child on the way, a life that wasn't built to impress, but to last. And that was more than enough. About 3 days after the wedding, the phone started ringing like a bingo hall on free pie night. Reporters, friends, distant cousins we hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to know if it was true. Did Ellie really steal a baby? Was she really pretending to be a mom just to get attention? And the answer, as crazy as it still sounds, was yes. The police had pieced it together quick. The couple who'd trusted Ellie, friends of hers from her fancy European circle, had left their daughter in her care for 1 week while they traveled. Ellie, for reasons known only to the gears turning in her ambitious little mind, decided that baby wasn't a babysitting gig. It was a ticket to status. She took the kid, flew home, doctored some photos, and spun a tale so thick, even my mom bought it. Claimed she'd given birth overseas, that the father was complicated, and that she didn't want to bring drama into the family. Classic Ellie, make herself a mystery so folks lean in close and never question the holes in the story. But when that baby's parents got home and found an empty crib, well, that mystery unraveled fast. The charges stacked up real quick. Kidnapping, false identity, fraud, and international child endangerment. And since she used a forged document to cross borders with that baby, that tacked on some federal heat too. Now, she didn't get tossed straight into prison, not yet. She was held without bail while they sorted jurisdiction stuff. Turns out, you can't just steal someone's kid, hop on a plane, and expect it to be handled like a parking ticket. My parents? They were gutted. Mom cried for 2 days straight. Not just from shame, but from guilt. How did I not know, Jake? She kept asking. She was always a little dramatic. But this? Dad, well, he didn't cry. He just sat on the porch for hours, staring at nothing, like the world got flipped upside down and he didn't have the tools to fix it. And me? I felt strange. Not angry. Not satisfied. Just hollow. Ellie had always been a pain, sure. Competitive, snide, smug. But I never thought she'd go this far. I'd spent years trying to prove I was better. Turns out, I didn't need to. She beat herself at her own game. The prosecutors wanted to make an example of her, said it was important to send a message about trust and manipulation, especially with children involved. They offered a deal, 8 years, reduced to 5 if she cooperated and showed remorse. Problem was, Ellie still didn't think she did anything wrong. When she called from county, her first words weren't, "I'm sorry." They overreacted. She said the parents should have known she'd be safe with me. Said the baby loved her. Claimed it was just a misunderstanding, that the press made it worse than it was, that she wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I hung up halfway through her speech. Mia just nodded when I told her. She still doesn't get it, she said. She might never. That was the last time I took Ellie's call. The trial's set for later this year. She'll likely do time, 5 years minimum. And when she gets out, I reckon she won't find the same world she left behind. Not the career, not the status, not the family, and certainly not my trust. About a month had passed since the wedding. Life had started to feel normal again, or at least, a new kind of normal. Mia was nesting like she'd read every parenting blog on earth, rearranging pillows and repainting walls we never even looked at before. I caught her one night labeling the spice jars. Told her we weren't raising a baby in a cooking show, but she just smiled and kept organizing. We were happy. Simple, real, and quiet. But then the letter came. No return address. Just my name in that tight, sharp handwriting I'd recognize anywhere. Ellie. I stared at it for a while before opening it. Like maybe it'd burn in my hands if I looked too long. Inside was 2 pages of apology or something like it. Jake. I know you probably hate me right now, and I wouldn't blame you. I didn't write to explain or make excuses. I just wanted to say, I see it now. Not the whole picture. Maybe I never will. But I see that I hurt you. That I always have. I spent my whole life trying to stay ahead of you. And when I couldn't, I tried to tear you down instead. I didn't know how to stop. Then you got something I didn't, real love. Not the kind with shiny titles or passport stamps. The kind that sticks when life gets hard. I didn't understand it. I think. Maybe I was jealous. And I'm sorry for what I did to you, to Mia, to that poor family. I can't undo it. I don't expect forgiveness. But I wanted you to hear it from me. I was wrong. Tell Mom I'm okay. Tell Dad. I'm sorry. Ellie. I read it twice. Then a third time. And I felt strange again. Not anger. Not relief. Just that same hollow ache I used to feel after we fought as kids and she'd walk away like nothing happened. I showed it to Mia. She read it, nodded once, then folded it back up and placed it on the table. Well, she said, maybe she's finally seeing the mess she made. I still don't trust her, I said. You don't have to, she replied. But that don't mean you have to carry it around, either. Smart woman, my Mia. The next week, we had dinner with my parents. Mom had stopped crying, but she hadn't smiled much either. Dad was quieter than usual, spent most of the meal staring at his hands like they held answers to questions he didn't know how to ask. I gave them the letter. Mom read it in silence. Her chin trembled once, then she folded the paper and put it in her purse without a word. Dad didn't read it. Just asked, does she mean it? I shrugged. I think she believes she does. That night, after the dishes were done and Mia had dozed off on the couch, I went out to the garage, my thinking spot. I looked around at the projects I never finished, the tools I bought but never used. Stuff that used to matter more than people. Then I thought about Ellie. Locked up in a place where none of her ambition, none of her cleverness, none of her charm could buy her peace. And I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt pity. But I also felt something stronger than both, freedom. She wasn't my burden anymore. I'd spent years trying to prove something to someone who only ever looked sideways at me. But not anymore. Now, I looked forward. To Mia. To fatherhood. To building something that didn't need to be better than anyone else's, just good enough to last. Now, I ain't gonna sugarcoat it. Fatherhood hits you like a freight train dressed in footy pajamas. Mia's due date came faster than a raccoon on a trash can raid. One minute we were buying onesies and arguing about paint colors. Next thing I know, we're in the hospital room. Mia's yelling at me for breathing too loud while the nurse keeps saying, almost there, like it's a cross-country road trip. But when that baby arrived, everything stopped. The world shrunk to the size of a tiny pair of lungs gasping for air and letting out a cry that sounded like life itself saying, here I am. Ready or not. We named her June. Not after anyone. Not from a list. Just June. Simple. Warm. Like a porch breeze on a summer night. And buddy, let me tell you, holding her in that moment, watching Mia exhausted and radiant all at once, I knew, without a sliver of doubt, that I had everything I'd ever chased. We took her home 2 days later, wrapped in a blanket bigger than she was, and the house felt different. Like it was alive now, filled with the soft shuffle of newborn life and that baby smell that makes you forget every bad thing that ever happened. The first week? Chaos. I changed a diaper upside down. Got peed on twice. Burned spaghetti. Forgot to feed the dog. Slept less than a raccoon during fireworks season. But I was happy. Mia was a natural. Calm, steady, even when June was colicky at 2:14 every single morning like she was punching a clock. We took shifts. She'd handle the rocking, I'd do the walking. Sometimes I'd just stand at the window, baby on my chest, humming some off-key tune from my childhood while the moon looked on like an old friend. The thing is, Ellie didn't even cross my mind. Not for a while. It was like she lived in a different timeline now, one where ambition and deception still mattered. Meanwhile, I was elbow deep in spit up and love. Mom and Dad came over every weekend to see June. Dad built her a cradle by hand, said he hadn't used his lathe in 10 years. Mom started knitting again, tiny socks, little hats, even a ridiculous baby-sized scarf we couldn't use because it covered June's whole face. And Mia? She never stopped shining. She'd look at me sometimes, in those quiet 3 a.m. moments when the world was asleep, and say, "You're really good at this." I'd laugh. At what? Holding a baby like a sack of flour? No, she'd say, laying her head on my shoulder. At being here. And that's when it hit me. I'd spent so long trying to be better than someone else, I forgot what it felt like to just be. To sit in a room with 2 people who love you without a scoreboard hanging over your head. Ellie sent another letter about 2 months after June was born. I didn't open it. Maybe one day I will. Maybe I won't. I figure some ghosts are better left knocking on the door without ever being let in. Because now I've got a new life. A real one. Built not out of comparison, but out of care. A home full of lullabies and laundry. And it suits me just fine. You ever sit with a sleeping baby in your arms, lights low, house quiet, and just think? Not the usual kind of thinking, like whether you left the oven on or if the car's oil needs changing, but the kind that crawls up from your chest and sits heavy on your heart. The kind that makes you ask, what kind of story am I leaving behind? That's where I was, about 4 months after June was born. She'd finally knocked off for her mid-afternoon nap, soft little breaths against my flannel shirt, and I was just sitting there on the porch swing, watching a squirrel wage war on the bird feeder and thinking about what sticks. Not the job titles. Not who made more, traveled farther, or had more letters after their name. Not even the mistakes. Not really. What sticks is how you show up. Ellie? She spent her life chasing something shiny. And maybe, once, I was right there behind her, thinking success was something you measured in miles or medals. But these days, success looks a whole lot like Saturday mornings with Mia in her robe, hair a mess, coffee in hand, dancing barefoot in the kitchen with June swaying on her hip. It's small, it's quiet, and it's everything. I started cleaning out the garage a while back, figured I'd turn a corner of it into a little woodshop. Something for me and June when she's old enough to hammer a nail without eating it. While I was going through boxes, I found a stack of old school awards. Science fair ribbons, spelling bee certificates, even the track medal Ellie used to wave in my face like it was a crown. I looked at him for a long minute. Then I tossed most of them. Not out of spite. Just, I didn't need him anymore. The past had already taught me what it needed to. I kept a few things, photos, a letter from my grandfather, a drawing I did in 3rd grade of a stick figure family with a dog that looked more like a potato. Stuff that made me smile. Stuff that reminded me not of what I achieved, but of who I was. When I think about what I want to give June, it's not a legacy of comparison. It's not about being the best. It's about being present. Steady. Kind. Honest. And yeah, she'll screw up someday. Just like her old man. Just like her aunt. But maybe, if I do it right, she won't feel like she's racing anyone but herself. I started a journal for her. 1 page at a time, written at night while the house is quiet. Little lessons. Big ones. Bits of life. Things I wish someone had told me when I was young and full of fire. Stuff like, you don't have to be the best. You just have to be good. And good takes work. Don't measure your worth by how others treat you. Especially if they don't know how to treat themselves. Forgive when you can. Walk away when you must. Mia found it the other day and added her own page. Something about love being a verb, not a feeling. She's smarter than me in most ways that matter. Ellie's trial finally wrapped up. 5 years, eligible for parole after 3. She pled guilty, showed some tears in court, but from what I heard through the grapevine, she's still blaming the world more than herself. Mom sends her letters. Dad doesn't talk about her much. Me? I've moved on. I don't wish her ill, but I don't waste my days hoping she turns around either. Some folks learn from their fall. Others just get used to the ground. There's a rhythm to life that don't show up in calendars or clocks. It's in the way the screen door creaks a little louder when June runs through it barefoot, giggling at the dog. It's in the way Mia hums off-key while stirring the pot, dancing with her hips like she forgot I was watching. It's in the wind when it hits the chimes just right, playing a tune no one wrote down but everyone understands. And me? I just sit out here most nights now, on this old wooden porch, nursing a cup of coffee, or sometimes something stronger, and watching it all unfold. There was a time when I thought life was a race. A long, grueling contest to prove myself to people who weren't even watching. Thought if I wasn't ahead of Ellie, I was behind in life. But life ain't a race. It's a garden. You plant things. You water them. You wait. You pull weeds. And if you're lucky, something grows. Ellie's chapter ended differently than I expected. She's still inside, from what I hear. Writes mom once a month. Mia's never brought her up again, not out of malice, but out of mercy. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop expecting a different version of someone who's shown you who they are. I kept that last letter she sent. It's in a drawer, under old batteries and half-dead pins. Haven't read it again, but I haven't tossed it either. Guess some things stay with you, even when you don't need 'em no more. June 6 now. Lost her first tooth last week. Marched into the kitchen holding it like she found gold. Said, "Daddy, now I get money under my pillow, right?" I laughed and told her, "That depends. What's her tooth's market value this year?" She didn't laugh. She just narrowed her eyes like Mia does when I forget to take the trash out. Smart kid. Too smart, maybe. But kind. So kind. She holds my hand sometimes for no reason. Just walks up, grabs it like it's the most natural thing in the world. And in those moments, every single ghost from my past just fades into the dusk. Mia started teaching again part-time. She says it's good to talk to grown-ups who don't think dinosaurs still exist. But every evening, she comes home, kisses me on the cheek, and says, "We're lucky, you know?" Yeah, we are. Not because we have the biggest house or the fanciest lives, but because we built something real. Something that doesn't need applause to matter. The porch light stays on most nights. Not because I'm waiting on anyone. Just habit, I guess. A quiet kind of welcome. A message in the dark. We're still here. Sometimes neighbors stop by. Sometimes it's just me and June catching lightning bugs while Mia flips through a book. And sometimes, when the air's still and the stars are out, I think about the boy I used to be, the one who wanted to win at all costs. I want to tell him, you don't have to outrun anyone. You just have to love what's right in front of you. Turns out, that's the real win. So here I am. Middle-aged. Sun-wrinkled. Coffee-stained. Wiser than I ever planned to be. And I wouldn't trade this life for all the trophies in Ellie's closet. Because in the end, the race ain't about being better. It's about being here. And brother, I am.